Listen up, get ready, I'm not gonna take no more. There's a revolution, a revelation going on in my soul. Buckle up, get ready, we're not gonna sit back.
Citizens of the world, all of you out there, welcome to another edition of the Live from the Heartland show. I'm Michael James, I'll be your host today, and I'm joined by Euan Hague. Good day to you, Euan.
Good day, Michael. How are you?
I'm good. I understand you were off in New York for a while. What did you see?
I did bit of touring of universities. My eldest is a senior in high school, Lane Tech, and so we went to check out a few places. We also took a walk on the High Line and over the Brooklyn Bridge, Staten Island Ferry, all the hits, and went to the Stonewall Memorial as well to check that out. So busy Saturday, beautiful day. So had good weather.
Right on. Well, everybody out there, here's a couple of things that caught my attention. A lot of elections have been taking place, and there were some this past Tuesday. And as the New York Times notes, the left notches another win with this secret weapon, old-fashioned organizing. And they're talking about Florida State Rep Angie Nixon, who scored a stunning upset against Alex Vindman, the former national security officer who was a top witness in Trump's impeachment trial. And they were both running for the Senate seat that's open in Florida. And she pulled it out. That's a surprise to, I guess, the regulars, but not such a surprise to some of us who kind of like the leftward drift of the Democratic Party. And on that note, we talked about it last week when the Democratic candidate for governor in Wisconsin, Francesca Hong, looked to be in the lead and then at the last minute was defeated. And it does show that as much as we want to build a big tent and be unified, there's a lot of opposition to progressive causes within the Democratic Party. We'll have more on that in days to come. A little bit of good news for Twin Peaks fans, and you all know that I'm a big fan, having had that band emerge from my basement. They will be playing at the Rose Bowl in Pasadena this Saturday, the 22nd. And then if you can't make it to California for that show, they'll be at Riot Fest on September 20th. On a sad note, a friend of mine, Ward Churchill, passed away this week. And he was a controversial dude. Taught at the University of Wisconsin. He had written a book or a piece after 9/11. Some people pushed back on the justice of roosting chickens. And he basically said that the attack on the World Trade Center was a response to the U.S. policy in the Middle East. Without going into a lot of that, let's just say that Ward was quite a formidable guy. We met, I think, when I gave a talk at Sangamon State back in the old days. He came to the Heartland. I was involved with him in the Rainbow Council of Elders. We both liked hot rod cars, and we're sorry he's gone. And our hearts go out to his wife, Natsu Sieto Churchill. Okay, that's enough for our little opening remarks. Let me tell you all that stick around because we have two wonderful guests today. We're going to start off in the first segment with Gina Barge. She has a new wax vinyl bar ramen shop on Chicago Avenue and has some events going on there. And she is the daughter of the wonderful Gene Barge, who's in a lot of movies that Andy Davis has directed, as well as being a formidable musician, producer, etc. So we'll hear some of his music. We'll hear from his daughter, Gina. And then in our second segment, we're going to talk to the sports writer, Dave Zirin, and he has a new book out on Howard Zinn. He's coming to Chicago. He'll be in Pilsen, I think, on the 3rd. We'll talk about that. Just letting you know ahead of time that he's going to talk about Howard Zinn, not so much about sports. Okay, stay tuned here on the left end of your dial, however you're getting live from the Heartland. And for those of you who listen to it on the radio, whether it be WLUW or on Lumpen Radio, you can get us anytime on Apple Podcast as well as YouTube, youtube.com/Heartland Media, or just the Live from the Heartland show. It's more fun on YouTube because a lot of pictures go along with our conversations, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, taking a little break. We'll be right back with Live from the Heartland.
Don't you know that I danced till the 4:03. I really had that night with Daddy G. He was swinging on the sax with the girls of two, and I was dancing all over the room. Don't you know the people were dancing like they were ready? The swingin'est band they had ever had, and the swingin'est song they could ever be. There's a night with Daddy G. Let me tell you that I never had it so good. Yeah, I know you never did. Until you get that piano with that jive, I think a man like the Church Street Five. Don't you know that I danced till the 4:03. When they had that night with Daddy G. Everybody was as happy as they could be, 'cause they was singing with Daddy G.
Citizens of the world, welcome back to Live from the Heartland for the week of August 21st. And we are recording it on the 19th. That's a Wednesday. And it's just a couple hours before the Cubs and the Sox go at it again. I am wearing my White Sox shirt in hope of a victory. Talk about that next week. Our next guest is someone who I met briefly at a memorial for her father, the one and only Gene Barge, who I got to know while working on Andy Davis films. And his daughter, Gina, is something else in her own right, and she has a new place that we're going to talk about. Good day to you, Gina.
Hi, how are you, Mike?
I'm good, and so glad you joined us. Our music producer, Lynn Orman, told me that you have a new place on Chicago Avenue.
I do. It's new-ish. So we've been, and I can tell you the exact amount of days because it wasn't my idea, right? We've been open for 2 years, 2 months, and 19 days.
Wow. What's its name?
Wax Vinyl Bar and Ramen Shop.
Okay, so that's pretty intriguing. Wax Vinyl, and I understand. I thought it was a jazz club, and then I learned that people come in and they play vinyl.
My husband's been a DJ since he was 12, and he's a vinyl purist. And so he always wanted to open a place. And so 3 months after our wedding, he sprung on me that he'd found a place to acquire. And I was like, really? So completely not my idea. It's a fun place, though. It's really a good hub for people who love music, love vinyl. We have only vinyl DJs. We're open Wednesday through Sunday. And, people love the vibe.
So it's a Wax Vinyl Bar and Ramen Shop at 1549 West Chicago.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about the ramen part of this.
Okay, that's interesting too. So we're sort of it's like a circular homage, right? So we're paying homage to Japanese kisas, which are listening rooms. And we went to Tokyo in advance of opening this place and just experienced all the different kinds of listening rooms that range from one guy in a room with one turntable and 10,000 records, and he knows exactly where everything is, to places that are closer to ours, which are larger places that people gather. They're, a lot of them have beautiful hi-fi sound systems. We don't have a hi-fi sound system. We have our sound system's been designed differently, but they range. And what's interesting about it is they pay homage to our music. It was kind of weird because we went into one of the kisas when we visited Tokyo, and my husband asked if they had anything by my father. And I was like, they're not going to know who my dad is. And he went straight to the albums where he had some of his most obscure sax solos. And I was like, wow, I don't even know if I've ever heard that one. So they really know their music over there.
Mm-hmm. Well, you have an event coming up there on the 26th. Why don't you tell us about that before we grill you more on your own life and your dad's?
Oh, sure. Yeah, no, Billy Branch, who is an old friend of the family. A father knew him from the blues world. He just released an album. I think he released it a while ago, but we're doing a listening party at Wax. And on Wednesday, we open at 5. and we will be playing the record, and Billy will be maybe giving a little talk. I'm not sure how he's going to plan to format it, but I'm sure it will be colorful because it is Billy.
Well, if you all go to our YouTube page and you punch in the name, you'll find our interview with Billy Branch, or our most recent interview. There's a couple of them when he's been on the show. Well, how many of these events do you do? Is it a regular thing where you bring in someone of some renown, or is it just younger DJs spinning their records?
So we have times when we bring people in that want to do their release parties, and we love that because more people are now releasing on vinyl. For a while, nobody did. And this gives them a good connection with the artist because it's something for them to sign. Nobody signs a flash drive, right? So having albums really gives them an opportunity to talk about it. You get that vinyl sound. So we've had artists that have ranged from, we had R&B singer Simone Green in recently. We have had Twilight Tone in. He released a single and from one of his productions. And so now we're having Billy. So we love to have artists come in and showcase their work. And then the rest of the time, we have DJs every night.
And is there a cover charge to get in?
There's not. We're a restaurant. So we don't have a cover charge. We just ask that people come in and enjoy our food and our drinks and enjoy the vibe and the space.
Well, on the restaurant front now, I started eating ramen in these little packs for about 30 cents a piece. And I've discovered through my son, Cadian, who is in the band Twin Peaks, he, during the pandemic, started doing a lot of cooking around the house. And I realized there are some really fancy ramen out there. Tell us a little bit about the food you're serving.
It's funny, we don't really market it this way, but our food is very inclusive in the sense that a lot of it starts off as vegan and gluten-free. The ramen is no different. So our ramen can be very different in the sense that we have rice noodles and we give it a little twist. The food is a little twist on, it's Asian, it's Japanese adjacent is the way I describe the food, because we infuse our own little thing into it. So we have things like collard green egg rolls and our ramen.
Collard green egg rolls.
We do.
I like that.
We have those. The wings are a fan favorite. And we created a Japanese-inspired barbecue sauce that we toss the wings in. People love the wings. People love a dish called Tokyo shrimp, which is in the same barbecue sauce as fried shrimp served over rice. And my husband actually developed that dish. So we have fun with the food.
It looks like they've got a menu for everyone. You've got seafood, you've got wings, you've got vegan options, vegetarian options. So it does look like a inclusive menu. I'm just looking at your website with all the upcoming events and all the tasty treats on offer.
Yeah.
What drew you to the Japanese influence on all this food?
It was because we're paying homage to the kisas, which are the listening rooms in Japan. So we thought we'd just kind of keep it authentic and see, well, it's not completely authentic because we're putting our own spin on it, but we thought that we'd infuse it and make it interesting.
Well, Gina, tell us now a little bit about yourself and what it's like growing up with a dad who was in the thick of all things musical here in Chicago.
It's funny. Growing up, it really didn't feel different to me because it's all I knew. So I would grow up. My mother would say, hey, go with your dad today, which usually meant spending time in the studio with my father. And as long as I had a book, I was good because then I could be quiet, according to And then when I started meeting all of these people, I understood really the gravity of his talent and what he was able to do from a production and arranging standpoint and as a performer himself. So that was kind of fun growing up.
How about giving our listeners and our viewers a little rundown of some of the people he played with, some of the tunes he's involved with, et cetera? Just run with it. Yeah.
So he produced Buddy Guy's first album. So that's one of his claims to fame. Buddy's an old friend of the family. And he worked with Natalie Cole for some years, primarily as an arranger, sometimes as a producer. And he wrote a couple of songs that she released. He played with the Rolling Stones as a saxophone player because he was primarily a saxophonist. He's primarily a saxophone player, and that's how he would describe himself as a sax man. And then for years, he played with a group called Big Twist and the Mellow Fellows.
I remember them.
Which evolved into the Chicago Rhythm and Blues Kings, which he performed with that band until he was probably 90. He was performing in blues clubs, and then he passed away at the age of 98. And we were fortunate to have him for a really long time.
Yeah, that's a good one. I first met him when Andy Davis was making the movie Stony Island, and he's prominent in that movie. I'm also in that movie, beating up Corliss Leachman's real life son and smashing saxophones. It's painful to watch. But Natalie Cole was one of the people, or a bunch of the people who played with her were involved in that movie.
That band, that was, and then you also had people like Phil Upchurch who were involved. Phil, we just lost Phil recently.
Oh, I didn't know that. I see Phil's son walking by here pretty often. Oh, I didn't know that he died. Yeah, he's in the scene that I'm in.
Yeah, Phil was great. Ronnie Barron, who else is? Oh, Ray Don Chong, a very young Susanna Hoffs was in that film. So that Stony Island gave a lot of people their start.
Tell us about the other movies your dad was in that you remember.
Well, he was in Stony Island, all the Andy Davis movies, right? So Code of Silence, The Package, The Fugitive, Above the Law. I used to know all of these completely off the top of my head.
Chain Reaction,
right?
So tell us about yourself and because you do some journalism. You've been to Second City. Fill us in. We've got some time here.
I live kind of a bifurcated life, right? So I have a very corporate day job. So by day, I'm an executive recruiter. And I work with a lot of like private equity firms and placing C-suite executives. So I place a lot of CEOs. And on the other side of my life, I was a journalist. I wrote for a Tribune paper for a while. And I also love to do comedy writing. So I was at the Second City for a while. I went through the stand-up program. I went through the comedic sketch writing program. And any chance I get to do something like that, I will. And then I also have done production. So I worked on the Godfathers and Sons of the Blues. Martin Scorsese did about a 6 or 7 part series on the blues that came out a long time ago. That was fun because I got to work with my friends and my dad's friends. We remade Electric Muddy Waters' Manish Boy song with some rappers. So it was, at the time, so fortunate that everyone was still alive. So at the time, the band was the original. It was my dad, it was Pete Cozy, Morris Jennings, Louis Satterfield, and Phil Upchurch. And they redid that track, but it included Chuck D, Common, Questlove, and a couple of other members of the Roots. So it was a really lovely compilation. And I was a field producer on that. So I was really fortunate to be a part of that project.
You know, I'm trying to remember what was the band your dad was with that when he was young and they were touring the East Coast, North Carolina?
Well, one of his first singles, his first hit record was with Gary U.S. Bonds. That's the one, yeah. That was Quarter to Three. And so that is the song that a lot of people know him for. That was released in, I believe, 1961. And it was a number one hit.
What's your favorite tune of your dad's?
My favorite that he's written is called Love is a 5-letter word, and that 5 letters is M-O-N-E-Y. So, yeah. that song's been covered by Van Morrison, and he played it a lot with Chicago Rhythm and Blues Kings.
And do you play an instrument?
I was trained in classical piano from the age of 5 through college. My father would tell you that I didn't play because I didn't practice. And I never really took to improv piano so much. I was very classical. So it was different than my creative talent manifested more in writing than it did in music.
What's your fondest memory of your dad and being with your dad and or your mom?
Well, that's a good question.
That's why I asked it.
I know, that's a really great question. I think, I remember, what I remember? Just going to the premieres of the films that Andy did was always fun because we got to dress up as a family. Andy would always send a limo, and I found that fascinating as a small child. And it was fun to go and to see my dad on the screen. Anytime that I could go, I made a point of making it to all of his gigs because you never know. I always said, you never know what is going to be his last one, right? And I was fortunate enough to have been at his last gig. But just, I love to always, even though the songs were usually the same, whatever, I always made a point to at least stop by his sets whenever he would play, just to stay connected.
I think it's interesting. You mentioned the remake of the song with like what is now the older generation of hip hop artists, and now you've got this new generation of DJs coming into Wax Vinyl Bar Ramen Shop. So you're kind of continuing that musical legacy over generations, and I think we often Chicago's kind of funny. Sometimes we kind of celebrate that, and sometimes it's almost out of sight, out of mind. I mean, I don't think younger people are maybe as familiar with Chess Records and its legacy as maybe you'd expect. And the city maybe doesn't make as much of it locally as you'd expect.
It's actually surprising how people don't understand the blues connection. My father moved here to Chicago to work for Chess Records. And he was a staff producer, and he was able to just grab people walking down the hall like Muddy Waters and Howling Wolf. He worked with the really young Minnie Riperton. He worked with Coco Taylor. He's the one who did the sax solo for Wang Dang Doodle. And I think it's because, I know, that's one of my favorite of his sax solos, actually. But it's fascinating when you really think about it and think about all of the firepower that was in that building. But you wanted to talk about Like a Ship for a second, didn't you?
I did. When I was getting ready for the show today, I remembered that your dad had been involved with Reverend Barrett, T.L. Barrett, and the Youth for Christ Choir album, which, I love gospel music. I remember as a kid, I went to Madison Square Garden. I saw Mahalia Jackson, Swan Silvertones, Dixie Hummingbirds. And, sometimes when I'm listening to WLUW, right before and after the Live from the Heartland show, there are gospel shows. And somewhere I heard this tune, Like a Ship Out on the Water, which is just beautiful. Tell us a little bit about it.
So what's interesting is Like a Ship didn't necessarily become relevant for me until recently. My father, first of all, had a really strong background in gospel. After Chess, he went to Stax and ran their gospel record label. So he was traveling back and forth to Tennessee. He also ran the Operation Breadbasket Band with Operation Push. Okay. So he was a big fixture there for several years. So gospel was really always a love of his. So Like a Ship, what's interesting about that record is that DJs have gotten a hold of it now. And my father had like a gold mine of vinyl in his house across the street from where I live, actually. He lived across the street from me. And I went... I put him there. He didn't love it at first. But I went down to his lower level, which is where his records were, and I pulled these two records. And so Like a Ship, the original press, which is now very valuable, and one has not even been opened, right? So there's one that's mint condition. I'm going to sell it one day. And then the other, when I opened the record and pulled it out, there were handwritten lyrics of Like a Ship because he worked with TL. So it was his handwriting. It was T.L. Barrett's handwriting, and they were writing out the lyrics of Like a Ship, and that's included in this record that I found. So I have a real collector's item on my hands.
And you're going to sell it all off or hold on to it? Who knows?
Spin it at the Wax Vinyl one night.
Well, we don't. There are now secondary presses of it, so we don't use those. But we keep it, and my husband and I have different ideas as to what will happen to it. I like for artifacts to be out in the world. I don't like to hoard things. And, if somebody is excited about it and they're a collector, then I'm like, oh, I'll think about it. But he doesn't want to sell it. So we have two of them. We have two original presses. One is still in the plastic and the other has the lyrics. So it's kind of funny that's making, my father was himself surprised that was making a resurgence. He goes, you care about that record? Yeah,
it's great. I think we'll include it in this interview with either coming in or going out. Gina Barge, it's really wonderful talking to you. We got about a minute left. How about you give us a little pitch about your restaurant and your upcoming event with Billy Branch?
Yeah, please come out. If you don't come any other time, please come out on Wednesday to hear, the Blues Is My Biography, which is Billy Branch's latest release. Wax Vinyl Bar and Ramen Shop is located in the heart of West Town. We feature great food, even better music, and even better company, if you can believe that. And so come on out and join us. We have a great menu of signature specialty cocktails and food. We have something for everyone. So don't be shy. Come out and say hello. Before
you know it, Euan and I, and maybe our engineer Hal, we're all going to come over there and live it up.
I hope you do.
You'll be there. We'll call you.
I would love to see you. I'm always there.
And how can people reach you if they want to be in touch?
Waxvinylbar@gmail.com is my best. I'm always in that email. Waxvinylbar@gmail. And that hits me directly. Also on Instagram, we're Wax Vinyl Bar. And we're also on TikTok. So you can check out some of our videos there too.
TikTok. Okay. Thanks so much, Gina.
Thanks, Michael.
And thanks everyone who's listening or viewing our program today. And we are going to take a short musical break, and we'll probably do something from Gene Barge. And we'll be right back with our next guest, the one and only Dave Zirin, a sports writer and a political commentator these days. So we'll be right back. Stay tuned on the left end of your dial. Citizens of the world, welcome back to Live from the Heartland for the week of August 21st. I'm still Michael James. I'm here with Euan Hague. And our next guest is someone who I met in El Paso, Texas during basketball in the barrio. We took a walk over the bridge, over the Rio Grande into Juarez, the one and only Dave Zirin. And I'm honored to say that he asked me once to do a little blurb for his first book on Muhammad Ali. And he's been on this show before. He's a guest at the Heartland Cafe on a number of occasions when he came to town to visit his sister. And we're glad to have him today. So hello to you, Dave Zirin.
Oh, I'm so glad we can do this because my sister's now in New York City, so the opportunities have lessened greatly.
Yeah, but you're coming to Chicago, and we should let people know about that. You want to fill us in?
The big get is September 3rd at Pilsen Books. That's where I'd love for people to go. I'm also speaking at the Socialism Conference in that weekend, but I'm really excited to go to Pilsen. The book is selling well there, and that bookstore just has a terrific reputation.
Pilsen Community Books, 1531 West 18th Street. And Dave is going to be there on next Thursday. And my understanding is a conversation between you and a rabbi named Rosen.
Yeah.
What's that all about? I mean, you're going to talk about your new book, but you're going to talk about what?
Well, Brent, we're going to talk about the book. I mean, Rabbi Rosen is I think the leading anti-Zionist Rebbe in the United States. He and I have been in conversation for a long time about not just Judaism in Israel, but really about politics. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's a longtime activist. He's somebody who really impressed with in so many levels. And I've been doing interviews with different people at these different stops, and I'm choosing just like a great variety of different kinds of folks to keep it fresh. Because, I'm curious. I'm just as curious as you. I don't know what angle Rabbi Rosen's going to take on this. But then, this Saturday, I'm speaking with Katia Stitt, who's the program director at WPFW Pacifica here in DC. Just trying to vary it up a little bit so we get different questions, different political frictions. But, we're going to be talking about the book. And if we talk about Howard Zinn's Judaism, then we can talk about that too.
Yeah, we should probably tell people what the name of the book is. It's The People's Historian: The Outsized Life of Howard Zinn, just published, I believe, by Penguin. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Why Howard Zinn? Why now?
Great question. Why Howard Zinn? Because I knew him at the end of his life pretty darn well, and he passed away in 2010. I'm a sports writer by trade, as Mike said, and I had never thought I'd write a book outside that lane, really. But in recent years, I've really heard a lot of people ask me this question about what would Howard Zinn say about our current political hellscape. And I just feel like I knew Howard's story well from the times we spent together. I once said to him, what we need is a book called The People's History of Howard Zinn, because his own life story is so incredible. And yet I never really was able to think that I would write that. But and then when Donald Trump came out and attacked Zinn on the White House lawn, basically blamed him for every ill in our society, save COVID itself. I knew, and also these attacks on U.S. history by the Trump administration, banning books, going after higher learning, going after high schools, and going after Zinn specifically. I mean, they're waging war on history because they're an authoritarian government, and history shows us that authoritarians lose. So what do you do in that situation? You attack history itself. Mumia Abu-Jamal, the political prisoner, I just saw him in prison, and I was talking about the book, and he said to me that they're waging a war on history because their agenda demands ignorance. And I think Howard Zinn's 70 years as both an activist and historian really does just answer a lot of the questions we're facing right now about how to ride through tyranny and come out the other end with our soul and spirit intact.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think his book, People's History of the United States, will be the one that most listeners will be familiar with. It was part of a whole movement in history to try and challenge that sort of sanitized Western expansionist manifest destiny and sort of tell the truth of what happened on a day-to-day basis with American history. And I feel that's exactly the kind of, the reality that the Trump administration is currently trying to erase.
Oh, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, I'm in Washington, D.C., and the signs they've put up outside the Smithsonian, saying basically don't believe the history that you read inside. This is fascistic. I mean,
Euan was just talking about that when he went to New York. There was a sign that was like that at the Stonewall exhibit.
Yeah, and in Philadelphia as well. There's a sign that to basically say, don't believe what you're reading here about the founding fathers and slavery. I mean, they really are trying to change history because if they have us thinking that this country is about the history of great white men who are infallible, that helps Donald Trump. I mean, why do we think he puts up AI slop of him riding a horse with George Washington? Because he wants people to think that he's infallible as well and unbeatable. I mean, it makes him risible in the opinions of so many. I don't know if you saw the recent poll that he only has a positive approval rating in, I think, 2 or 3 states in the entire country. So it's not working, but he is, some of this I think is the fact that his brain is porridge, but he's addicted to this idea of himself as this kind of uber regime leader, an authoritarian in the tradition of the worst people of the 20th century. It's disgusting. And the politics of Zinn, I think, are so essential to building a left right now, because I don't know what y'all think, but I've got 2 kids, 18 and 22. I'm Euan. I'm curious what you think being around people that age, but I see a lot of anger among my kids and their peer group about the system, a desire to even dismantle this system, but not a lot of hope that they could actually build something better. There's a great despondency in this generation, and I get why. Yeah. But Howard Zinn lived through a lot of despondency and came out the other end, lived through various tyrannies and came out the other end. And he was able to do so not because he was some sort of pie in the sky, oh, this is the best of all possible worlds, but because he was rooted in historical study. And I think we need an optimism that's also very realist based and rooted in history, if for no other reason. So this young generation doesn't have to recreate the wheel and learn all the lessons of previous generations.
Dave, tell us a little bit more about Zinn, his life, growing up poor, being a laborer, going off to Spelman College. Fill our listeners and viewers in on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a life that could fill 10 books. I mean, there are actually even individual vignettes in the book that I feel like could be entire volumes on their own. I mean, I said to someone recently that his life is like if Forrest Gump was directed by John Sayles, because like Gump, he finds himself in the middle of these incredible situations, but he's not a fool. Or a know-nothing. I mean, as John Sayles would have directed it, he's this labor historian and activist of the First Order who finds himself in the middle of these grand historical moments. So, I mean, I'll run through it in quick thumbnail fashion, but we're talking about somebody born the children of immigrants, very poor in Brooklyn, becomes a union organizer as a teenager during the Great Depression, in addition to graduating high school early with honors. And he goes to work on the naval yards. He's around a lot of radical thinkers. He reads like a maniac. I mean, just this thirst for knowledge. And that process of being in Brooklyn in the 30s also made him, like it made so many of his generation, a real devout anti-fascist, with everything happening first in Spain and seeing people in Brooklyn going off to fight in the Spanish Civil War and the Abraham Lincoln Brigades and then coming back. I mean, it made him want to fight fascism. And he saw joining World War II, the Army Air Corps, and becoming a bombardier, even though, by the way, he'd never been on a plane before, becoming a bombardier during World War II. But then leaving World War II with a real disillusionment about this idea that there's anything that could be called a just war. Hiroshima and Nagasaki played a role in that. His own actions, bombing people from high in the sky, and the idea that he had bombed civilians was also very jarring and life-changing for him. So he emerges from World War II really wanting to fight for the rights of veterans and fighting for the rights of the oppressed. And he does that in New York City while married to Rosalind Schechter Zinn. They're having 2 kids together. And then he gets the attention of the Red Squad. So there's this whole chapter in the book about him getting accosted by the FBI. I read all his FBI files for doing this book. I don't want to give away too much. I want people to read the book. Like I said, I could go on and on. You've got the 50s when he's teaching at Spelman College. He's the adult advisor of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. He's at the heart of the movement against the war in Vietnam. And in his 80s, he was one of the leading voices against Bush's forever wars in the Middle East. So there's so much to talk about in the book. And that's the most thumbnail of all thumbnails I can give you.
Dave, where do you think he would be at today on Gaza and that whole question, and maybe even take it to the kind of split evolving in the Democratic Party between the progressive wing and the centrist?
Well, 2 distinct and really good questions, Mike. First of all, starting in 1967, because of the influence of both SNCC and people like Bob Moses and the Black Panther Party, he was, and of course, 67 was the Israeli-Egypt war. You have Zinn, a devout pro-Palestinian political mindset from that point on, had really not thought of the issue much before 67. Or if he did, it was like, oh, they're trying to create a kind of socialist model out of the wreckages of the Holocaust. But because they're just actually, what I looked up into this, there really wasn't anything even in the left U.S. press. I mean, this is obviously decades before the internet. So how you even find out about Palestine in the United States before 67 would have been its own, you would have had to have been somebody who really was trying to search that stuff out. And that's just not where his head was. But it was really, the anti-colonial struggles, connecting that to Palestine, connecting that to the Black freedom movement in this country, and having that internationalist mindset. That's what really shaped him around Palestine. And then later in life, I think it was 1999, he actually writes this brilliant essay about the horrors of the Holocaust, but then the exploitation of the Holocaust by Zionists, and the price that we pay when we think that phrase "never again" only applies to this one historical instance, and that idea of turning inward instead of turning outward to make sure that "never again" actually is a phrase that has some teeth. Of course, it hasn't, not least of all by the Israeli state itself. In its attacks and genocide in Palestine. So that's where his politics there. Now, as for the split in the Democratic Party, I think that's sort of a complicated question, because I do think he would have been, very happy to see the DSA, to see the left really connect, particularly with young people. Like, he would have felt a great sense of hope about that. But he also had a great skepticism of electoral politics. And I think he would stand with the idea that even if the DSA member of your dreams is elected in your local office, if there's not a movement to keep their spine straight, then the very sort of right-wing semi-inertia of the U.S. political system would inevitably pay a toll on that person. So, he once said it matters less who's sitting in the White House than who's sitting in. And I think that was a core belief he held his entire life.
Did you talk to him? I mean, I know you said you met him, previously, and then obviously have researched his life. But what was the impetus or the process to write his famous People's History of the United States?
Yeah, we spoke about that too. I mean, the book comes out in 1980, and if you think about it, that's an incredible zag in terms of the zigzag of this country, because 1980, Reagan, the death of the 1960s being announced, the conservative revolution, the detritus of which still chokes us today. And in that climate, he writes this opus of a radical history text looking at U.S. history through the eyes of the oppressed. Now, it's not like he was the first person to write a people's history or the first person to use the phrase people's history. By my research, that really does come out of the 1970s, particularly with the bicentennial in 76.
Right. That makes sense.
Of people trying to say, well, let's look at U.S. history in a different kind of a way. 76 still close enough to the 60s that these ideas were really percolating still at that time. And so his book was really a culmination of what he had learned, what he had read, and what he had experienced. And it was able to he was 58 years old. And yet somehow it was really able to connect with a whole several generations of people, particularly before the internet, who, couldn't go to TikTok to find politics that was off the beaten path. But that book, I mean, I remember when I was coming up politically, that was the book everybody had read. I mean, I was thinking about what were like the books when I was coming up, and it was that and the revival of the autobiography of Malcolm X. I mean, it was thought that if you hadn't read those two books, you just weren't even part of the conversation that was happening. I mean, certainly there were other texts. Angela Davis's book about women, race, and class was a huge one as well. But if we're talking about like that sort of broad popular intervention in how we were thinking about the world, it was Howard Zinn and it was Malcolm X. And so it became like this common language. But I got to tell you, the reason why it's survived to this day, the reason why it's sold 4 million copies is because it's taught in high schools and in colleges. And one history teacher said to me, I'm no radical, but I do know that Howard Zinn is the only thing that keeps my kids off their phones.
I mean, and there's this effort again now with textbook wars. We're back in textbook wars, which we were in the 1980s. I mean, I think these obviously there's been debates in Texas about textbooks and which historical figures we should highlight in those textbooks. And that's happening, as we talked about earlier, national parks. And you mentioned the Smithsonian. I mean, his voice is as urgent as ever. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. There's an urgency, and it doesn't even have to be him, because I do think one of his legacies is that his work has allowed 100 flowers to bloom. Right. I mean, there's so many amazing historians doing that kind of work from below in this day and age. And those are the very people who a lot of teachers are having to smuggle into their classrooms. There's a book called Smuggling Pedagogy. I might be getting the title wrong, but it's like people have to, like teachers are having to be surreptitious to bring these ideas in the classroom in many states. But, you know, it's something that really captures the imagination of their students. And for a lot of teachers, that makes it worth it. And I think it captures the imagination so much. And this goes really more clearly to your question, Euan, but it makes you feel like you're the subject of history instead of the object. You're not the person things happen to, but you're somebody who can be part of the motor of how the world changes. I really do think that's what connected so strongly with folks.
Dave, what has been the response to your book? And is there any people out there or in your own being that kind of shift from writing all these sports books to doing a book like this?
Well, there have been few people who've said, "What the hell are you doing?" than I thought there would be. Not that hasn't happened, but like I got to tell you, like I've been so encouraged by the reception to the book. I'm not just saying that. The thing that I feel the most in my heart is when people read it and they say this is the right book for the right time, because that was the whole point. I mean, is to say like, wait a minute, you know, it's not just about this guy's outsized life, but it's about the lessons for us today that are so critical. And putting that book together, I mean, it was a challenge. I worked on it for 6 years. I put a lot of things to the side to be able to write it. You know, and it was, I dedicated the book to my mom because, you know, she had a lengthy illness and then passed away during those 6 years. So, you know, it was a real trial. I almost quit it several times, returned the advance. So, I got to tell you, I'm really happy with how it turned out. I'm thrilled. And I never thought I'd say that while I was writing.
Let me throw in here before we run out of time that you're going to be in Chicago, the center of the universe, on Thursday, September 3rd, this year, 2026, from 7 o'clock on at Pilsen Community Books, 1531 West 18th Street. And you are going to be there along with Rabbi Brant Rosen, and you're going to have a discussion. So we encourage everyone to go on out. And now that I've put that out there, can I ask you a sports question?
Absolutely, Mike James.
One of the things that is going on, you know, is this controversy, this kind of black and white controversy in the women's basketball, WNBA. What are your thoughts on that and any comments?
My thoughts is that this is pure, unadulterated, right-wing exploitation of an issue that does not actually exist. They don't want to talk about the fact that their great leader is floundering and looking like a porridge-headed idiot. They don't want to talk about how much gas prices are costing. They don't want to talk about this absurd, wasteful, horrid war in Iran. What they want to talk about above all else is the possibility that a trans athlete could play in the WNBA. By the way, a league and a sport that before all of this, they didn't give two craps about. So this is all an incredible okie doke as a way to distract and divide people. All they know how to do is give new people to hate on a given week. So it'll be the WNBA this week and it'll be somebody else next week. It's revolving hatreds. And that's all they can really offer at this point because they're not offering much else.
Dave, you were, before the World Cup came to the States and to Mexico and Canada, you were pretty critical and saying it should be canceled. I, of course, got right in line with you on that. It actually got pulled off pretty smoothly in some respects, I think. Euan is a big soccer fan or football fan and does play football regularly, starting back in Scotland. What are your thoughts on how the World Cup turned out?
Well, I got to say, we always have to do caveats before I generally agree with you about the smoothness of it. To say it wasn't smooth for the Iranian team. No, it wasn't smooth for the Somali referee who was sent home. It wasn't smooth for the people who did run into ice along the way and had to deal with that. I mean, there was a lot of ugliness that went under or unreported in the particular U.S. hosting. And to be clear, my position was not cancel the World Cup. It was just send it all to Canada and Mexico.
Right.
And cut the U.S. out, please, for the safety of everyone. But it was also just the U.S. didn't deserve to host it. I mean, just a rogue nation clearly exploiting FIFA and the incredibly sycophantic relationship between FIFA boss Gianni Infantino and Donald Trump. And I got to say, like, as smooth as we say it went, the refereeing between Egypt and Argentina was an absolute abomination. And the fact that Trump got the red card pulled from the U.S.'s best player was a disgusting, brazen show of corruption.
I take it back.
That stained U.S. soccer. And let me tell you something. The best thing to ever happen to U.S. soccer was losing that next game. In such embarrassing fashion, because if they had won, the only story would have been about how corrupt it all was.
And I think, they lost that game because of the overturning of the card.
Agreed.
I mean, one of the reasons, there was others in tactics and so forth, but I actually think it changed the whole impetus. I think it changed the vibe around the American team. It gave Belgium, who'd looked almost down and out previously against, was it Senegal that they scraped past? Belgium were there for the taking, and I think the U.S. if the U.S. had just gone in that game without any of the Balogun stuff and the red card, it would have been different. But I think it actually came back to bite them, and I think most of world soccer saw it as Trump's influence rather than anything particularly U.S. soccer did. I mean, but it just left a bad taste.
It does leave a bad taste, and there's so much more to say about it. The one thing I'll say is that the team was being regarded as plucky and really interesting before then. Yeah. That's what I mean about the stain on USA soccer. And if they had lost without Balogun, they would have been remembered that way as a really positive intervention into the cup. And instead, they left with a lot of shame and a lot of the players saying if Trump hadn't intervened, we would have had a better vibe.
Dave Zirin, you're a wonderful guy, and we're so thankful that you came on live from the Heartland. We want to thank everybody who makes this show possible, from Euan Hague, our engineer Hal James, our guests today, Gina Barge and Dave Zirin. I'm Michael James, and I encourage you to all keep doing good in the world. The world needs all the good that we do, particularly the good we do together, and it's all about joy and justice. So have a good time and fight for the right things. Over and out till next week. All power to the people.
Power to the people.
She can. Over the mountain.
Thank you for watching the Live from the Heartland show.
You got a dream
New episodes air every Friday beginning at 9 a.m. Central Time.
It may not come
Thursday on Can
but
TV,
you know you've got a friend.
Sweet Home Chicago.
I'll be by your side the entire ride. Just let me hear you say amen. Are you doing?
Audio episodes go live on WLUW Saturday 9 a.m. on the left end of your dial at 88.7 FM. We're streaming everywhere worldwide at WLUW.org.
Are you doing the best you can?
They're available on Apple and Spotify podcasts by looking up Live from the Heartland on either platform, and are also broadcast on Lumpen Radio Friday at 9 a.m. on 105.5 FM and streaming at lumpenradio.com. I'm Michael James, and I'm glad to have been your host. Until next time, remember, do good in the world because the world needs all the good that you do, that I do, that we do together. All power to the people. Over and out.
Come to limb. Are you doing the best you can?
Tell me, are you doing? Are you doing the best you can?